So the second banner for Trom is finally out, and would you look at that, they went ahead and released Charles the Great. I personally thought it was supposed to be Don Quixote. I could have sworn that was what the leaks were from 2 years ago, but I guess I must have just misread or missaw something in the story. I mean, I knew there was a different interpretation for Charlemagne going into this versus Extella Link, but I didn't think it was going to be a bait and switch like that. But I've always preferred the other version of Charlemagne as opposed to the spunky one that we have in Extella Link. I like the big Giga Chad ruler guy, so I'm really excited that we got him in FGO, although it is really strange that even though he's part of Charlemagne and he's the main antagonist of a main Fate work in Extella Link, they made him a 4-star and a Lancer at that. I mean, I guess they're trying to go for something kinda new, but I don't know, I guess you guys can leave those thoughts in the comments down below. And as per usual, make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe if you like being up to date on all the goings-on on both the NA and JP versions of the game. But again, sometimes I guess we just get the story wrong, because I could have sworn it was supposed to be Don Quixote, but hey, the story knows much better than I do, right? If they say it's Charles the Great, then you know what? It's Charles the Great. So with that being said, let's start diving into his kit, starting off with his hits, where they also went ahead and gave him the standard Lancer deck. That means double quick cards, double buster cards. This will actually play very nicely with Ruler Scotty when she comes out in just a few months over here on the NA side of things, because the new Ruler Scotty does give you technically more NP gain with the 65% quick buff, but she also gives you really big buster crit damage. So if you want to be a quick critter, you want to go with the original Scotty, but if you want the new Scotty for the higher NP gain, you want to have at least those double buster cards so you can take advantage of that massive crit damage she's going to be providing for you, and our boy Charles the Great over here is going to be able to do that in spades. He's also got some particularly nasty hits on his quick cards, 5 hits a pop with that 5-hit extra attack, a composite card that Gen Stars NP and does big boy damage and is my favorite card type. So love to see them giving him the 5-hit treatment over here, and also the 0.71% NP gain treatment as well. That means he will be able to refund quite well on his base quick cards as long as you are supporting him correctly. Although I do wish that maybe his NP got a bit higher hits than just the 5, but I guess I didn't want to bring the giant Gundam mech out for this one, so I guess we're just kind of keeping it a little bit tame, going with a little more of a poke and run type of strategy, and I can kind of respect that. But the main takeaway is that he's going to be really good with Ruler Scotty because of how his deck is coming out, and then he'll be able to get some really good NP refund on his base quick cards because of their high hits and the very good natural NP gain that he has. But let's go ahead and start diving into his kit, starting off with skill 1, The Great Adventure of the Traveling Knight, which I guess kind of makes sense. You know, Charles the Great had to do some type of great adventuring, I suppose, when he was going on his conquest. I guess it makes sense. And it makes sense that it's a pretty decent skill at that, giving him a 20% quick and buster buff for 3 turns and a 3-turn guts that gives him 2k HP on a 6-turn cooldown. Now, do keep in mind that quick buff is a little bit bigger than it's letting on. He has a passive Riding E, giving him an additional 2% quick buff over there, so, you know, hold your horses, mind the pun, that he's going to be having a 22% quick buff. Which, in all honesty, this is not a bad skill, giving him some pretty decent survivability in the guts. You know, sometimes your dodge from Scotty or your Mystic Code invincibility is going to get bypassed by a boss's sure hit or their own Pierce invincibility, so having a guts to guarantee that you will survive, bar it getting removed off of your servant, will be very, very helpful. Although I do wish, especially for someone like Charles the Great, that he maybe at least got a mana burst. You'd think he would have gotten something like that, maybe even at least 30%. And I could have sworn that his riding buff should have been higher. I mean, Charlemagne did make extensive use of horses in his combat, so you'd think he'd be better than E, but I don't know, maybe they just don't think he's quite as good. Maybe they want the other Charlemagne to shine, but, you know, it's a decent skill, just wish the values were a little bit higher. Moving on to his second skill, Opening the Door of Fantasy, which, again, seems like that should be something more for OG, the other Charlemagne, not Charles the Great over here, but I don't know, maybe they got like a skill mixed up, but whatever, I'll take it because this is a very powerful skill, giving Charles a 20% attack buff for 3 turns, 10% NP gauge every turn for 3 turns, and 10 stars every turn for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. this is not only giving him another buff type, but it's giving him some pretty decent sustain. I don't really think he needs the additional stars, especially once Ruler Scotty comes out, because she will also have a star regenning skill, but there are bosses where they will rob your stars from you. They're not that common, but they do occur, and so if you are going to bring them to some of those fights, it is nice that you have these recurring stars to at least refill the stars you might have lost, or say you regen over 50 stars and they take 20 of them, you know, if you hit 70, you're still chilling with 50 stars, so that's kind of nice. Although I do also like that Charles the Great's kit is built in a way to fund his own third skill with his second skill. I mean, his natural NP refund is really high, and giving himself NP every single turn is good, but you can, I guess, cash in on that with his third skill over here, Closing the Curtain of Reality, which I know I've been saying that, but this really should go to the other Charlemagne, the fantastical one, not the realistic Charles the Great historical character. I mean, if anything, the other guy's closing the curtain on reality. This guy is opening the curtains of reality, but I guess they limited it to E because they're like, well, maybe this doesn't make all that much sense. I just don't really know what the, FGO lore writers were really cooking with Trom, but it's also something that I'm not completely sure what the designers were cooking with this, because yes, you can fund this skill quite easily with his natural NP gain and his second skill, but you do lose 30% of your own battery to charge your other two party members' battery by 30% and to bomb 20 stars. Now, this could be really good if you were, say, a Buster or an Art Servant, or if you're using OG Scotty, because Ruler Scotty, who this guy would work pretty well with, her NP doesn't really do a whole lot. Sure, it does damage, and sometimes you do need that extra bit of chip damage. She also has a power mod, so it could kind of elevate itself from chip damage to decent damage, and then it does drain the enemy's NP, but think about how good OG Scotty's NP is, and I think you get more value out of this if you use this with her to assist her in getting to her NP, because I think a lot of people discount how good Scotty's NP is because they don't see it very much. That's because you're not doing arch chains like you are when you're using somebody like Merlin, Castoria, Lady Avalon. You see their NPs all the time, especially because they have party-wide NP buffs as well. So everybody's getting NP and they're refunding everybody's NP gauge. So you see their NPs a lot more. Scotty gives you big fat batteries, so don't really see her NP all that often. But if you use this to maybe help her get to that, she provides survivability, crit damage, a 5-turn attack buff, insta-kill immunity if that ever does come up, but hey, it's going to come up in Lost Belt 7, just don't say I didn't warn you. But unfortunately, I do think it works better on, your Buster buffers, because I mean, even Koyanskaya rips a page out of OG Tamamo's book and refunds NP as her overcharge, which I do think is a little bit more useful than the NP suck that Summer Scotty has. But it's not without its merits. Sometimes I think it could be useful if you have been going for those Scotty arch chains, but the problem is, bro over here only has one arts card, so it's kind of a way to help Scotty get to her NP if you're using him with her, but at the same time, he only has one arts card, but he has the double because I'm assuming they knew about Ruler Scotty coming out. It's very weird. I think it's one of those skills that if we get a cracked new quick support for Anniversary or New Year's or Summer Servant at this point, they threw out Summer Scotty last summer, and I guess this upcoming summer over here for the NA side of things, so anything's really real at this point. They could just chuck whoever they want out there, and if it's a crazy quick support that can have some modicum of an NP that's similar to either a Merlin or a Castoria, and they have a charisma skill that gives a battery, this might be more real in those setups. However, finally, let's look at his NP, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I already know that is definitely German, because surely they would not give my man Charles the Great a Spanish NP, because that just wouldn't make any sense. Now, he's going to deal damage to one enemy, obviously he's a single target, and he's going to get a pretty sweet power mod against giant enemies, which I think is a little bit backwards. Charles the Great has the giant mech, so he should be doing giant damage, not beating up giants, but maybe it's like a kaiju fight type of thing where they're expecting you to break this thing out against other giant mechs or other kaijus and stuff along those lines. That could kind of make some sense. And then he's also going to increase the party's attack by 20% for 3 turns and give them a 20% crit damage buff for 3 turns as well, while also dealing 1,000 damage to himself, which does kind of suck because neither Scotty has sustainability, healing, ways to kind of keep your servants alive. At least with, say, a double Castoria setup, you have a lot of survivability, so you rarely take very much damage because of the invuls and solemn defenses that are flying around, so this is a little unfortunate for him. But on the bright side, if you do think about him in a context with Ruler Scotty, again, like I said, she doesn't really do a whole lot of damage unless you're using her as the DPS or she has her power mod. But this is a way to kind of build her up if you're thinking about using her in just a double Scotty setup. It could work that way. But I think one of the places that Charles the Great might work out much better is in kind of like a multi-core type of team, or where you have another pseudo DPS slash support also in the same team, because then they can benefit from maybe getting their NP. Maybe the part of the fight where Don Quixote would be a lot better is already over, so you kind of just let him dump his NP over there, still let him fire his NP every now and then because it is still support, and he is still providing stars, which technically goes to everybody in the party. I think that would work a lot better for the boy Charles the Great over here, and it makes sense because bro led a whole army, so of course he's got to have some kind of synergy with all of his knights. I do also think that bringing another DPS would be in your best interest, because at NP1, again, for some reason, you know, you have this great ruler, Charles the Great, this guy who led the Holy Roman Empire, and his single target damage is really not all that great. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. There certainly have been more stinky single targets, but he reminds me a little bit of Roland, who is on the other banner, which I guess makes sense, you know, they're from the same area and all. But they have these pretty good kits, where I do think Roland's is a little bit better, but same principle that they are these guys that you probably want to roll for a couple of copies of. But thankfully, Charles the Great over here is on the banner with one of the most goated servants of all time, that being my boy Ruler Moriarty. And so I already know that you're going to be summoning on this banner, and you'll get yourselves 4, 5, 6, 700 Charles the Greats on this banner. And that means you can not only get this guy to NP5, you can get 2 of them to NP5, level them both up to level 120, get all of their pen skills on both of them, and then just put those on the support and flex. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video on Charles the Great to be very informative and to be very helpful. I think they are, you know, a little bit of an interesting servant. Again, gameplay aside, I do think it's a very interesting direction for Trom to kind of take in here, and trying to do the Extella Link thing again with having both Charlemagnes running around. But, you know, hey, that's Higashide writing and not me. Maybe not what I would have done. I probably would have actually kept Don Quixote in the script. But hey, what are you going to do? Maybe they just didn't think he was popular enough. I certainly think he's popular enough. Who hasn't heard about a guy charging at windmills because he thought they were giants? But hey, maybe for anniversary, right? Or maybe for New Year's, they'll drop a legendary servant like that. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.